Okay. So here we go. Dial cards removed, faceplate removed. We're getting close to this guy right here. Okay, so this is the cavity where the clutch mechanism sits. So the shaft comes through the front, goes through this hole right here. This is the fork, which is activated by the buttons on the front. And so, as I said in an earlier video, the distance between these two calls here on the fork looks like it's going to be critical, and as I said, it doesn't look like it's adjustable. I don't see any way of adjusting it. There's a lot of rust in here as well, so while I'm in here I may as well attack all this rust, see if we can get rid of all of that and do a tidy up on it as well. So there are the two plates that I took out, and yeah, they look pretty shattered, and so we'll give it a go with the initial plates and see how we go. Not sure if I have the choice, I guess, now of using this light wheel or the donor one. So we'll see. I'll probably use the donor shaft because the donor shaft is in slightly better condition than this one. So I think I may just go ahead and use all of this guy right here as my replacement. But first of all, I'll see about tidying all this rust up and measuring the fork gap and all that stuff. Another factor may well be just play in the mechanism. That seems an awful lot of play to me, given the total amount of travel to activate the clutch ain't much more than that anyway. And so if I move it the other way, there's still a lot of movement there. So as I get into this, I'm going to see if I can if there's anything I can do to reduce the amount of play in the fork mechanism. Okay, here's the mechanism from the underside of the chassis. So basically you have the fork here, and it's mounted on an upper shaft, and this upper shaft is just really to provide a fulcrum for the fork to rotate around. So the shaft itself is just completely free to rotate, and the fork is fixed to it, and it really just primarily just sets the lateral position of where the fork sits, right to left here. The important guy, or if you like to call it, the activation shaft is this one right here, which is driven by a little lever off to the switch mechanism, so that when you activate the clutch one way or the other, this shaft rotates a couple of degrees either way. That rotation is just transferred to here, which has a mechanism to engage the fork in a slot, and then that moves the slot. So if I go to FM, you can see it brings it up, and then when I go to anything else, it goes down. So in the non-FM position, there's still some slack, but it's a lot less than it was. In the FM, there's still an amount of slack, and I don't think there's a lot I can do with it because it's just really related to how the pin in this little activation mechanism sits in the slot. There's just a lot of clearance there. So I guess it's a feature, not a fault. So I think I've figured it out as best I need to for now. And it's cleaned up and I got rid of most of the rust off the mechanism, and it's looking a whole lot healthier. So I think I'll leave this for now. Well, it is as I feared in terms of the distance between the two tangs of the fork. So the distance is actually 31 mil, and so at the moment my two discs would be 37.5. So as you can see, there's way too much movement there. This fork would never activate the clutch. So my idea about the cork pads was all for naught. So we'll have to make up some new pads with just the rubber washer. Learning as we go. Right, I've cleaned up the other two plates and get them ready for their rubber washers. So I'll get to that. I'm being real careful and so inspecting everything closely. So I had a good look at this flywheel, which is the one I've taken out. And if you look at this side of it, you'll see everything looks really good. It's clean, flat, there's no damage anywhere. And so, of course, you have a nice flat surface with the teeth all aligned, and so the clutch plate will fit quite nicely and engage properly. However, if I look on this side, I don't know if you can see this, but let me see if I can get it catching the light. But there's definite signs of damage top and bottom here. And I don't know whether that's corrosion that came in here or what, but what it means is there's a very slight swelling of this surface right at these 2 points. This means that this surface here is not flat, and so obviously the clutch pad is only going to be engaged at this point here and at this point here, the two high points, and in fact even the top of this tooth right at the top here, you probably can't see it, but it's actually stripped off. So I have a feeling this particular guy here is also a major reason why it was engaged fine on one side but couldn't get it to engage properly on the other side, no matter how well I adjusted it. Now of course, if the pads were nice and soft and supple rubber, it would probably compensate for this, but when everything got hard and brittle, it doesn't compensate anymore. So this guy is not gonna, this guy's in the junk, and we're gonna use this guy because he looks cool on both sides. Okay, I've redone the pads so that there's no cork underneath. If anything, they're a little bit too close together, but I think that's going to be easier to adjust than having them way too far apart. So I've laid them out in the sequence that everything has to slide onto the shaft as it goes through from one side to the other. And I've tipped up the chassis so that the shaft as it goes through here is near horizontal. Because if it was tipped down, as it would normally be, as I was sequentially sliding the pieces on, they'd have a tendency to fall off. So I think one by one we have to slide the little parts on and hoping I can get them all on there till I get it through the other end, and yeah, give it a shot. I don't think there's any way I can get the camera on this while I do it, so I'll just have to show you guys when it's done. Okay guys, sometime later and many expletives later, here's where we're at. So I pushed the shaft through from the front, and as it came through I loaded in sequence all the washers and spacers and clutch plates, flywheel, and then the other at the other end. It gets really difficult on this end because you have very little shaft lateral movement to play with, and yet you got to get all these things on. And actually one of the hardest was to get these two washers to get up onto the shaft, so you could then put the little nylon bush in place. Finally got it all through, got the little E-clip fixed on the end, But then I discovered that I wasn't watching the fork down here. And what had happened was the fork, each tang of the fork was on the wrong side of these activation plates. So I had to loosen off the fork mechanism off its shaft and slide it laterally this way so I could get it out beyond this disc and then move it over and move it back in. I think we're there, at least in terms of an initial setup anyway, because it's set on AM now, so the front disc will go with the flywheel. So hopefully you can see, I put a couple of little marks there so you can see. And the back one is not moving. And it seems to be held fairly tightly. If I select FM, then the front one should stay stationary and the back one will go with the flywheel. They seem to be relatively equidistant from the flywheel plate in the middle. So yeah, I think I cleaned it all up really well here, so I think I'll lube this up a little bit on each shaft, just to make sure there's not going to be any friction building up there. And then I think I'll do a trial restring of the dial cord for FM. See how that works out, because I have a feeling I'll be putting these dial cords on and off a couple of times, so may as well get used to it. Okay, so far so good, I think. Okay guys, so far so good. So I've restrung the thing, at least temporarily, just to make sure that there is enough friction from these rubber pads to pull the cords along. And so this is the FM one, which seems to be working really well now. Nice firm travel in both directions. If I go in AM, then it'll be this top one here. You can see that one moves just fine as well, or at least I hope you can. So, the rather frustrating thing now is I have to unstring it again to put the back plate on. But hey, I think we're making progress. Well, I'm pleased to say that my plan to replace the key seems to have worked okay. So I cut the original one off, the one that was cracked, with a Dremel, and cut the little spring steel piece as it fell out. The only slight tricky thing is it's actually underneath. So it's a little bit fiddly trying to make sure that you get that spring steel piece into the little slot in the metal bracket and then push it on, and you can hear it scrape as the spring steel grabs the sidewalls. So I'm pretty pleased with that, so I'll do it up the other end as well, and that's that little task out of the way. Result. Okay, all back together. Working nicely.
Cette semaine, à la rubrique Culture de sens, nous vous présentons des extraits de la nouvelle. I trust you, it's already.
Avec le sang et ne plus jamais en finir, forcer l'envie.
Vraiment, je suis tourné sur l'objectif. Un jeu. Pendant 145 jours. Donc vraiment, il n'y a pas...
tiré faible des volumes. Donc en fait, ça par rapport.
Mentian dalla Svizzera con Out of Here del 2008 e poc'anzi Sandy Altermat.
Réaliser l'histoire, on reviendra à cela tout à l'heure. Je prends pratiquement une traduction là que j'ai trouvée.
So there we go. The only thing that still remains, there's always something that remains, is for some reason the holes in this cab don't line up properly with the actual chassis. So you can see there's a big gap here. There's no gap here. So I need to move the whole chassis over this way. But I can't until I drill out the holes in the base of the cab. So I'll get to that and on. So there we go. Done.